Hi, everybody, and welcome to this half an hour where we want to try and do something that I'm actually not used to do, and that is to speak in a small amount of time and try to explain a few insights, share this with you in the context of the current global external situation that we are in, the global ecosystem, if you may. My name is Etienne from Walt. I am the CEO of Neurozone, a neurologist, and also co-founder of Neurozone. I've been involved in the company for just about 10 years now. What a privilege to work with numbers of very wonderfully dynamic people working on neuroscience, analytics, bringing all of this together to build what we call or actually not build, but to unravel, discover the high performance resilience code for individuals, teams, organizations, etc. Wonderful endeavor, something that I am so privileged to be part of in the second half of my professional life, having been a neurologist in the clinical setting, seeing many patients with diseases of the brain-body system, the nervous system, the muscular system, working in hospitals. And now I'm very privileged to also be involved in functionality, looking at resilience from a neurobiological perspective, looking at how high performance readiness works, once again, from a neurobiological perspective, the physiology, the psychology behind it, and utilizing that to provide the insights that we learn from this incredible field to leaders like yourself, you being leaders of people. Most of you on the call, and I see we have a large number of people here. It's great to be with you. We are all at home in South Africa, at least, and I'm sure elsewhere, so many of us being locked down in one way or another, confined. And it's a great opportunity to really reflect upon how our brain-body systems work to be resilient, to be ready, to be high performance ready. And as you, as leaders of people, as I said, many are coaches, many are human capital professionals, others are business leaders, always working with people as individuals and within the group context. And it's worthwhile to reflect what makes us truly human and what makes us truly resilient in this aspect as well. And these two are absolutely intricately connected. You cannot be human without having resilience in your system. And I'm going to explain that and hopefully bring about a bit of those insights into a practical manner to you, so we can actually look at what is practically possible as well to remain resilient in this very volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world. You all know the term VUCA, V-U-C-A. We've been talking about this term, and I've been using it, and I was going to say almost abusing it, because it became such a part of the cliches of what I was using when we talk about this rapidly evolving world. I'd always thought about the speed of tech. You know, it's the idea that everything is rapidly accelerating at the speed of technology, and we need to change with that. Change management so tough. But now we all of a sudden, within a matter of weeks, some even days and others longer, find ourselves in a place where even a day or a week ago feels like an eternity. And many of us, our loved ones, we sit and argue about, how long ago did this and this happen? Is it a week ago? Is it 2 weeks ago? It feels like a month ago. So many things happening so rapidly. The world just rapidly, disruptively evolving in not a nice way. And the question is, how do we overcome these challenges in the same fashion that we need to overcome the challenges in our work environment on a daily basis at the speed of tech? We also need to overcome the challenges that we are being confronted with the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, and in general, so many other collateral complications, as you know, very, very tough challenges from a socioeconomic perspective. So this is just an introduction. What I want to do is to have a bit of a conversation with you about the brain-body system and talk to you about the idea of resilience, talk to you about the idea of a complex adaptive organism, and then share some thoughts with you of what we've learned from the code, of what is important now to really build resilience in such a difficult period in our history. So let me share a screen with you. Why do we start with this slide? Well, this slide is what we call a neural network. I'm sure you recognize this looking at this. Some of you on the call we know very well, and others, most of the people on the call are newcomers, new to Neurozone, and you're really very, very welcome. What you see here is a neural circuit. It's a beautiful illustration of a number of neurons, brain cells, these blue cells that you see here being neurons that are intricately connected with one another. And each of these electrically active neurons or brain cells connect with somewhere between 1,000 and 40,000 or make at least so many connections. It is incredible the amount of the networks that can be formed through these connections called synapses of brain cells. And you can also see that these little, it's well insulated here with a yellow called myelin, little monsters ink, looks like something from an animation, but it's called an oligodendrocyte. These are little cells that connect, they're not that small, because they continue to just form these myelin around these big axons, these wires, to ensure that there's a quick and fast conduction between all of these circuits. And this is the way we think, we act, we feel, we act with even unconsciously. And by far, most of this incredible neural networks in our brains, very lateralized in terms of its functions, are unconscious. Some neuroscientists say 10,000 to 1 unconscious. I support that notion. But let's say it is, even if it was 99 to 1, it is just vastly unconscious. And so the unconscious processor at work is what is driving us forward also while we are confined and isolated and, of course, very often very scared. And I'll explain how that works as well. But what you see here, and this is what I want to bring through this slide to our attention, you see these little interesting little structures here, substances. They look like pieces of cereal, but they are called growth factors. And growth factors are essential to enhance the strength of connections, the amount of connections, and even grow new brain cells. And you can do this in the right places. And I want you to focus on this idea that we need to grow new brain circuits and continue to nourish the brain circuits in our brains in the areas where we need it to grow, so that we can actually have a very good memory formation system, knowledge building system, and a system that utilizes all the knowledge for the benefit of our individual problem solving and our collective problem solving, and for our interconnectedness with others, even while we cannot feel and touch each other through social distancing. And I heard a friend of mine say recently, it's actually physical distancing. We're not socially distant, and we actually need to understand that we actually want the brain to be nourished so that that works properly. And you want the parts of the brain that makes you anxious and worried, and actually very often irrational, or at least inappropriately respond to the challenges or perceived challenges as bigger than they necessarily are. You want that part of the brain to be attenuated so that there's a realistic internal representation of what is out there. The second screen that I want you to, the slide that I want you to look at, is this wonderful illustration of the brain itself. And what you see here is that these little pink little balls, if you may, are called amygdalas. They are the almond type of nuclei, or part of the brain that's called the amygdala in Latin, of course, for almond. And these amygdalas are really the seat of emotion. And these amygdalas really respond to the external environment. And it asks the question continuously and unconsciously, how important is what I'm actually perceiving now to keep me alive, to ensure that I survive, and then, of course, to ensure through that I actually have a sense of belonging, that I have a sense of identity within the group context, and a sense of making a meaningful contribution, of being meaningful in my group. Why is that so important? Because we are never an individual outside of the context of a group. I'm going to show you a slide a bit later when we're going to talk, just very briefly, touch on this idea of the idea of a system that's developing right from the cellular to the society. And I'm going to illustrate that to you in a beautiful little slide. The idea is that we need to stay alive, survive, and thrive in a world, in a very complex world, intricately connected and socially safe. Now, social safety and psychological safety are two different constructs, right? So psychological safety means I have the safety to voice my opinion and I will not be shot down by anybody in my team or my group. But social safety refers to the way that the social brain builds its safety constructs through bonding and belonging. And bonding and belonging are two very different concepts. Bonding means I entrust myself to another. You've got my back, I've got yours. And so I stay alive through your actions. And a mother and a child keep each other alive. Mother keeps the child alive through bonding. We have bonding in our close-knit families where we have entrustment. We have bonding in our teams, small teams, where we entrust ourselves in that sense to one another. And then belonging is more towards society, organizational, and we need both of these. They run in very different brain structures, very different neurotransmitter systems. Belonging, for example, uses dopamine as a neurotransmitter system in those neural circuits, whereas bonding uses the oxytocin as the hormone of trust and entrustment. It's important to understand that it's so different. And what you see here is the amygdala as the seat of the emotion, looking outside and trying to figure out what is going to kill me. It responds to threats at least 4 to 6 times as readily as it responds to rewards. So it's incredibly focused at providing safety for us to prevent threats. So when at the end of December, when COVID-19 was out in the Far East, many people who live far from China was probably concerned and had empathy. But the amygdala did not actually start to fire up and actually activated the brain at a very primordial level. It was when things came closer, and even just a few weeks ago. For the last few weeks, the world, when the pandemic really developed, these amygdalas started to light up and fire. And of course, everything comes closer and closer to home. So there's this idea that the threats, and the threats are multiplied because we now have financial insecurity together with physical insecurity. And of course, as a whole, as an organism, we are threatened. And don't underestimate the unconscious effect of the organism called humanity being affected by this pandemic, not having an effect on you as an individual. That is not true. In fact, unconsciously, we are all very, very deeply interconnected, and it has an effect on us. And so makes for interesting phenomenal behavioral studies or phenomena studies. But this is what's driving everything is the amygdala. It responds, and you want this to be attenuated. When you are chronically stressed, close to burnout, and you don't have enough sleep, and you don't rest well, and you don't have silence mind that is silent and mindfulness that is well practiced, etc., or you're not safe, this amygdala really gets going, and it is exaggerated, and it gives you what's called primordial regulation, amygdala regulation of the system, and it starts to make snap decisions. It keeps you awake and lets you sleep 4 or 5 hours a night and wake you up in the mid-morning when you don't know why you can't sleep. But it's because the unconscious system through these amygdalas are actually firing. What you really want to do is you want to attenuate these amygdalas. Think about how you attenuate these amygdalas and activate this beautiful system that you see here, the prefrontal cortex. So this prefrontal cortex, this orange blob, most sophisticated part of your brain and of the frontal lobe, is what you want to regulate your whole system with. And the way that you actually activate the prefrontal cortex to regulate the system is by reducing the brain cell structures in the amygdalas and enhance the growth. Remember those little pieces of cereal I mentioned, those growth factors? You want to enhance the growth factors so that these prefrontal cortices work really well for you, that you regulate the system through the prefrontal cortex, and that you can have the best capacity for problem solving, the best capacity for sophisticated problem solving, to overcome the challenges that come our way, and then to actually learn and grow through that. You want to build the parts of the brain that you actually remember with. And you can actually see there's an interesting little structure there that I'm just pointing to in gray. It's called the hippocampus. That's the area that you learn with. And of course, if we do and stick to the things that we are going to discuss now with you, to build a resilient and performance-ready brain, you can actually end up with this brain and continue to have this brain even during times of lockdown. So what is resilience? It's an innate capacity. It's an innate capacity that, and if you can see, there it is, it's on the slides, right? It's the capacity of this brain-body system to overcome an adverse event. For example, the adverse event that we are in, it's a crisis, global, but it's an adverse event for the system. So the system really assesses what's going on, makes an internal representation of that, and then it has to predict where this is going to go so that I can actually adjust and actually be alive and well at the time when wherever I predict this is going to go, that I'm actually still there. So you can see how well good predictions is quite important. So it means I need knowledge. And if I don't have enough knowledge, how do I get the knowledge? I plug in with the group. So collaborative knowledge of where things are moving and to what extent we actually need to do what's needed to overcome the challenge and to still be around when the challenge has been removed is critical. So you overcome an adverse event, you learn from the experience, and then, very important, we grow through that experience, and then we can overcome challenges of similar nature, but greater challenges. And often if it's psychological, you can overcome challenges of different, dissimilar nature. And this is what makes resilience in the psychological sense so incredible. So resilience refers to, for those of you who have studied psychology, looked into this idea of allostasis. Homeostasis, by the way, is everything that goes in must go out again. Everything is just very static, like water balance in your system. I drink water and I get rid of the water in exactly the same amount. So there's the balance is completely the same. With resilience and allostasis, underlying resilience, something else happens. I have a problem. I predict how I'm going to overcome this. I assign energy to the task. I overcome it and I grow through it. So there's growth. And this is allostasis. And so what you want is you continuously have to unconsciously overcome challenges. We continuously do it. Let me give you an example of resilience. I'll show you. If I take my arm and I actually work a dumbbell and my bicep starts to work, I overcome the gravity and the challenge that this weight now poses to me. It says, I'm going to pull you down. I say, I'm going to pull you up. And I pull up the dumbbell, and then what happens? Well, after a week, I get back and look in the mirror and say, what's happened there? Somebody swallowed this bicep. I've got a wonderful bicep. Why? I grew a muscle. Why? Because I learned from the adverse event. So the growth of the muscle that you've developed is a very good example of resilience. It means your system adapts to the challenge and says, now I'm ready to actually overcome a challenge of similar but actually greater nature. I'm going to pick up a heavier dumbbell. And this is exactly what the brain-body system has. So you actually have a system that overcomes challenges by predicting what's going to happen, how heavy this thing is. If the prediction was wrong, if I had too much energy assigned to the dumbbell, I would have done this, boom, right? Or I would have just pulled it up and I would hurt myself. But I have a good prediction of the weight of the dumbbell. And if it was too low, I wouldn't have been able to pick it up. Now I can just exert the right amount of energy and pick it up. Isn't it fascinating that we've made these predictions? And in the same way, whatever comes your way, your system makes a prediction of what the nature of the problem is, how dangerous it is, and how much energy I need to assign to overcome the challenge. And then I learn from that through so-called prediction errors. And then in time, I become more clever and clever unconsciously to overcome those challenges going forward in my life. That is adaptation. That is what a complex adaptive organism does all the time. If you think about the virus, and of course, I'm not an immunologist, and I haven't been in the field of medicine for too long now to actually stick my head into that. But I just want to make a comment. If you think about the virus, even the viral load and the way that the virus works to infect an individual, if the virus infects us, our system responds to the challenge through the immune system. And it has to overcome that challenge and then learn from it and then prevent it from happening again. And how does that work? It's called immunity. And so when you overcome the challenge of a viral infection and you are not killed by the virus because your resilience is strong enough, you will learn from it, develop immunity, and then be stronger and actually be immune against this problem going forward. If you think about if you have chronic illness or you are fragile and your resilience is not as high as it used to be when you were 20 and healthy, the challenge is that our resilience is reduced. And the challenge that the virus poses now is far greater because I have less to overcome the challenge with. And so the challenge can overcome me, and that means death. So one can understand from that perspective how the brain-body system works physically with resilience. Psychologically, exactly the same. You and I are sitting in confinement, and by far most of us are not going to be affected physically by the virus. If I say physically, I mean affected. You might even have the infection, but it's going to be a flu for you. Not a flu, but flu-like. And so what's going to happen is that, but we are all psychologically challenged. We are challenged psychologically, our social safety, by our meaningfulness. We are challenged by a number of things. And so the idea is that you have to be resilient and you have to overcome this event. Let me just say one more thing about a complex adaptive system. This is a complex little slide, so I'm going to be very fast. These little agents down here are you and me. We are all different and we all interact. And what we do is as we interact and there's a pattern that emerges that is very different from you and me. It's called the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. It's the easiest way to understand a system. The sum is bigger than the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts, and you simply can't explain how that works. And these patterns, emergent patterns, or emergent properties, just provides us with huge capacity to overcome challenges that you and I individually would not be able to have done. This is why it's so important to be interrelated and interactive and actually connected with our collective, connected to the collective. Very, very critical. And then through this, we can actually influence future interactions and overcome challenges going forward. So it's very important to understand that you and I are part of it. Look at this. There you see genes. Genetic is a big genetic system. There are molecular networks. There are cellular networks in the body. There are organs. And so all understand that, right? And now you've got all these organs together and you've got an individual. That's you and me. We are challenged by viruses at the moment and number of other things that affect us as individuals. But don't forget that we are also individual cells, if you may, of social networks. And so every single thing, you and I are also individual so-called fractals of a bigger system. And this system needs to stay healthy. And you and I have to play a part to keep it healthy, and it will keep us healthy. And so this is a very important activity that is essential. The reason you and I are talking to each other is because of the interaction that happens between these two. What you and I do going forward affects the social network, and the social network keeps us well as well. So you can see this incredible interrelatedness of a complex adaptive system. What we've done at Neurozone in the last 5 minutes is we've looked at a number of drivers that drives us to thrive in life, which means that we stay in a baseline relaxed physiological state despite all the challenges that come our way. That is what we call resilience, high resilience, and high performance readiness. It means that you're ready to overcome your challenges, and with your skill set, you can be a very high performer. Of course, you need skills. And so this is the brain-body system optimized. We know that there are foundational drivers called these green drivers. That's exercise and movement, nutrition, sleep-wake cycle. Yes, silencing the mind, mindfulness training. They are foundational. Then we have the blue driver systems here, which starts with social safety. Have a sense of trust, belonging, bonding, and then belonging, and a sense of making a meaningful contribution at work. We need goal-directedness. That means you have energy that you can assign to tasks, so you can overcome the challenges with the energy you assign to tasks. And self-leadership and leadership does a lot for this. But I'm going to explain it to you a bit further. And then there's collective creativity. How do we work through empathy, cognitive, effective empathy, to be collectively better than as individuals, the so-called C factor. And then there's the problem-solving machine, learning, abstraction, executive function. I don't have time to go through everything, but I want to tell you this is comprehensive. It's not complete, but it's a comprehensive system. And there are 68 sub-drivers with these little dots underneath that are important. For example, under exercise, high-intensity interval training is one example of a form of exercise where you, of course, the doctor must say you're fine, but if you are fine and you have got a clean bill of health, then you can exercise your system, try to actually reach a certain percentage of your maximum heart rate, just for a few minutes. I would, for example, try to run in the backyard, just a few little strides, paces up and down, and just run my system up and try to get my heart rate as high as possible, say for 2 minutes at a time. You could do it for 10 minutes and just do 3 or 4 of these stints. And we know that that already has an effect. So even at home, you can actually pump your heart rate by jumping or doing things that in a small confined space, getting that heart rate up. And that's high intensity interval training. It's one of the examples under exercise. Nutrition, intermittent fasting, valuable. It reduces the inflammatory system and it makes the pro-inflammation go away, reboots the immune system, and so you are way stronger, resilient from that perspective. Also from a psychological perspective. Once again, you need a clean bill of health to be able to do that. But these are all examples within the system that we have studied that gives us a code and says these are the most important behaviors that you need now to be resilient. And I'll get back to that now in a second. So just a few more further remarks. What we've done is I want you to just look at one little model that we are using at Neurozone as well, to ensure that you are socially safe and have high energy to assign to every task that you have. You're in a confined space, you have to focus on what you do, and you must have a certain routine and rhythm, but you need energy to overcome the challenges in that confined space, which is not that easy. The first thing you need is high self-worth. Now, this is not self-esteem. It means that you are actioning your personal values. You are still doing this, even though you're in a very different ecosystem at the moment. Personal values have got two different types of values. One is about me, and the other one is about me and others. If it's about my intrapersonal values, it's about my hygiene, about what I do to actually stay well, stay morally well. And of course, for example, I have to wash my body with my hands every day. Of course, my hands many times more. But I want to make my bed. Those kind of things. These are certain values that people live with. Continue to practice your personal values. The second one is your personal interactions with the people, and especially very difficult with your loved ones who are always around you in these 21 days. How do you actually work with those? How do you interrelate with them? And how do you interact morally, fair, etc., etc.? Those are personal values. The degree to which you action those values determine your self-integrity. That's integrating your values into action. That gives you self-integrity. And that is self-worth. It gives you self-worth. So self-worth can be practiced every day by continuously thinking about it, especially during the times when you silence your mind. The next one is a healthy mood state. How do you have a healthy mood state? Serotonin. Of course, some of you are on medication. That's fine. If you're not on medication and you're in confined space, you need to silence your mind daily so that you can do deep breathing and really get into something called focused attention or open monitoring. There's a lot out there that you can read. You can use Headspace, the app. There are many other apps, but find a way to silence your mind for 15 minutes a day. It's been scientifically proven to be important, and it moves you into a baseline relaxed physiological state. It attenuates the amygdalas, and it gets this prefrontal cortex to regulate everything. It's a beautiful way of doing it. And it moves you into a healthier mood state. The same with exercise does that, right? And so your fruits and vegetables also important. You can see that actually really sets you up. It sets you up so that you can have loads of energy like a spring, very springy coil to achieve goals that need to be achieved. You can use your knowledge and skills to do it. And the stronger this coil is, the better. What comes with this is very important. You need to practice gratitude. I'm grateful for what I've got. Practice gratitude and optimism. Practice curiosity, practice enthusiasm, and look for people who are enthusiastic about things and actually just connect with them. And humor, of course, that we're very good at that, right? Humor, continue to have humor. Those actually enhances the springiness of the coil and give you more energy to assign the tasks you need or to achieve the tasks that you need to achieve, or the goals you need to achieve, those assigned tasks. And then you have to reduce your destructive habits and remove them, and remove negative, intrusive thought patterns. That is extremely important. By removing negative, intrusive thought patterns and destructive habits, you really give springiness to this coil, and your goal achievement shoots up. This has been well shown in scientific studies. It's very valuable. And so I'm going to get back to this in a second. Of course, this gives us motivation and confidence, belief, and the reward of dopamine. And this completes this process. What I'm going to show you now is what we have found, and I actually asked the team at Neurozone, the analytics division, and said, come and just go and dig into your science and into the data, and give me, I think there were around 110 odd individuals who completed our assessments and actually looked, and we analyzed since about a month ago, just more than a month ago, since the COVID escalation. And I said, show me what these individuals as a group look like, and look for significant components of these sub-behaviors that have been shown to be really critical for them to do as it is compared to the code that we've been studying now over the last 10 years. And it's interesting. It's very, very fascinating. These are the ones that are really important now for this group. And it's been shown to be significant, although we need more and more numbers. It's an evolving trend, and we are continuously actually adding more data. But I can share this with you as as a trend in evolution, that and it makes sense, right? We need exercise, diversity and duration, reduce negative thought patterns, avoid destructive habits, practice enthusiasm, be mobile, continuously move, ensure, and this is belonging in work life and identity in work life, quite critical. How do we actually ensure within our teams online that we continue to have a belonging and identity? And then, of course, there's optimism and compassion. Now, optimism usually is the number one if there's no crisis. I find this quite fascinating, that we actually need something else here that we're not really paying attention to ensure that we stay resilient. But these are still the most important. So optimism is still in the top. What are these? Are they top 10 behaviors of the 68 behaviors we usually assess? And so I find this very fascinating. So ensure that your goal directness is high by practicing these 10. And I'll go back to that slide in a second if you want to take a screenshot of that. Practice the 4 foundational drivers. Reducing negative thoughts, so important, also to enhance our self-worth. Then the gratitude, the optimism, and never forget the social safety. And of course, the one that's so important here is to have a sense that you belong and that you are making a meaningful contribution, even where you are. Right, so this is what we have found from the Neurozone system. And finally, I just want to say 2 things about Neurozone. So Neurozone is all about neuroscience analytics. We are about 10 years old. We've been working very hard at, as I said, discovering this incredible human behavioral code for resilience and high performance, to prevent burnout and to make people resilient and high performance ready. This is the course that we currently are running with our coaches, and many of you are coaches who are interested in this course. Please have a look at the website, contact Ulinka. For those of you who are coaches or human capital professionals, we also offer this. Quite a few business leaders are making use of the service to really provide you with the insights to understand how resilient self-leadership, innovation capacity, and learning capacity really works from a brain-body system perspective. And so you're very welcome to contact the link, and we would love to be of assistance also if you are interested in our services. I'm putting it out there because it's such a critical time now, and we love to be involved. Maybe I can just take you back to this slide because you would want to look at this again. And so maybe you're very welcome to take a screenshot of this particular slide. I want to just say thank you to everybody. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And we will be sharing these types of recordings in the future and let you have, if you are interested, you can just let us know and it will be available. So we'll have some recordings that could be available on demand. We'll be talking about a new topic, of course, next time. So all of the best to all of you, and have a wonderful evening in South Africa and a great morning elsewhere in the US. Goodbye.